as both Mr. Guptu and Mr. Sarkar have pointed out, what did the First World War do that deserves commemoration, which was called by Dr. Sujata Sen as celebration? But, you know, make a change of power for the Ottoman Empire and create a problem known as the Middle East, which has been the area of thrift for so-called superpowers for decades together. That is what the First World War did. Then, commemoration is a practice which always celebrates the victor over the victim. The victim is just there in the statue, but what is it that prompted him to be there is not shown, not seen. It gives a kind of a sanctification to untruths and to doubt. When we are not even sure about things like Easter and Good Friday, we commemorate it and thus sanctify it and stop all kinds of creative inquiry. I do believe this is a very serious point, and I'm not indulging in semantics at all. Unfortunately, the culture of commemoration celebrates the antics of certain people like the gardener professor who appropriated his so-called senior relation in a bid to form a kind of edifice of mediocrity and perhaps woo the gullible voter. This we see in the media all the time. To sum up, the culture of commemoration, I repeat, not commemoration per se, the culture of commemoration, that's the habit of commemoration, the way commemoration is being done in the country, that is the result of the actions of regressive minds who cannot think forward. They are regressive because they always go back to what was done before. Point out one program of commemoration in recent times, and that includes the so-called celebration within quotes of the First World War, certainly not something to celebrate. I'm very stunned that the opposition has chosen to think of events like 9/11, like the First World War, like the Second World War, like in effect Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, to talk of commemoration, but there were other things they could have spoken of, which perhaps deserve, if not commemoration, at least talking about. Unfortunately, recalling these horrors doesn't do any good to looking forward and to say, and that would be very simplistic in my opinion, that seeing those horrors one would be deterred from doing these things would tantamount to celebrating, let's say, Keshpur here, Nondigram, Shingur, Boranagar, Kashipur during 1971, 26/11, all of these should be therefore celebrated, commemorated. Then and only then will we refrain from performing these acts. So that's an extremely simplistic argument on their point of view. So I'll end with a short story. I think that this whole culture of commemoration reminds me of the veterinary doctor who had given up his profession to go into politics, you know, much like the gardener professor, and was very concerned with freedom and all kinds of, you know, esoteric abstract ideals. When the group of surgeons who wanted him back in the profession because he was good at one point of time, gave him a paper to read out at a seminar, and the paper was on indigestion in donkeys. You see, he was a veterinary surgeon. So he prepared the paper and he began like this. He said, what is indigestion? Indigestion occurs when a particle of food which is swallowed and goes down the esophagus encounters a blockade. Now let's look at it now from the point of view of the particle. The particle finds itself trapped, and what does the particle say? The particle says, give me liberty or give me death. And he sought to expound on liberty and death. So much for the culture of commemoration. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the speakers have had the say, and I sit before you and your decision. I've been requested to say a few words, come up with a few remarks. I've taken down some of the points of the speakers, and I've decided to do away with whatever I had taken down of the speakers, to be very honest with you. I've just taken down a couple of points that I would like to speak about. Because when I go to the lectern, I don't want to influence your opinion to either support this side or that. Which is why the task cut out for this chairman is a very unenviable one. With your permission, I shall proceed. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was sitting at the center, very frankly, I was itching to get into the debate. The temptations are very high. But there are certain temptations you have to resist. In the capacity of a moderator or a chairman, call him what you will, you have to exercise a great deal of patience. But I did find it very interesting, and it was getting, just when it was really getting very exciting, but it came to a close, very frankly. Observations have been made that we are having this in the precincts of the Victoria Memorial. And before that, of course, came up this business of fossilized mines. Today, before the debate started, I got a confirmation from the gentleman who framed the topic in consultation with his colleagues, I'm sure, and I asked whether fossilized mines, that term, was actually his, something that he had coined. And he answered in the affirmative, and I congratulated him heartily. There was one speaker who said the good doctor would expound on fossilization. I was looking forward to that. That did not happen, unfortunately. But if mines, like so many other things, could be fossilized, I can assure you, the archaeologists will be over the moon. Seriously, imagine a mine getting fossilized, literally. Any archaeologist will be over the moon. We talk of the Victoria Memorial. All right, let us not talk about it as a commemoration at all. Let us talk about it for what it stands. It might have been named after Victoria, founded 18 years after her death in the year 1900. It was founded, took a long time to build, but every time I pass it, I find I'm in awe of this structure. Built over what? 73 acres. Let me tell you, I see it, this memorial, maybe it may have been named after the late Queen of England, but it symbolizes all that Calcutta stands for. You talk of its beauty, aesthetics, you also talk of the ailments, shall we say, the problems. Everything of Calcutta, and here, in a very serene way, stands a symbol. Just send a picture of Victoria Memorial, people would know you're talking of Kolkata. Indeed, that is true. But then you see, when you're talking of commemoration and so many other things, with due apologies, I must say, to Dr. Kunal Sarkar, because he will hear me repeating something since he and I have spoken often together, both in Calcutta and outside. I would repeat something for everyone's information that has often crossed my mind. And we are during the hurly-burly of the elections. The fact is, even a child would know that the majority of India lives in villages, in what you call the rural area or the rural sector. The majority of India lives in the rural sector. And whether you like it or you don't, a majority of that rural sector lies in, to use V.S. Naipaul's words, the areas of darkness. And it would take 1,000 mutinies to take those people out of the areas of darkness. They do not have access to the primary needs of what a human being needs to live. These people, if they stay there at all, they exist. I had a very nightmarish experience on one afternoon around 1:30. In a village not far from Sundarban, I remember having ventured after our work was complete in a village with a few local villagers and a few other friends. We ventured. We drove as far as we could till the villagers said we couldn't, the road was not motorable, so we would have to walk it. We did walk it. And what we walked into, believe me, a place or entered a place that was so dark you could not even see your own hand. I'm not exaggerating one bit. This happens in a lot of other states of India. They're deliberately neglected and ignored. Post-independence, in the colonial era, they were neglected, ignored. Also in the Mughal era. I do not know how many thousands of years they remained precisely as they were. Yet, in the parliament, geographically they are represented. We elect the people, we the people elect those people, and the problem is, these people don't have access to drinking water, they don't have access to clothes, they don't have access to food, let alone literacy, education. When I was talking to Dr. Subramanian Swamy in public the other day, I spoke to him in his capacity as an economist. And he's a very qualified economist. He goes to Harvard every year, teaches two streams of economics, the mathematical economics, and the other side with the Nobel laureate Stevenson. And in his capacity as an economist, he agreed wholeheartedly when I presented this problem to him that yes, you're right. The day our conscience reawakens, or awakens, not reawakens, awakens, and we do something about them. We give them the essentials, we give them literacy, we educate them, then the purchasing power increases so much that India would be economically so sound a nation that nobody need pay income tax also in this country. There is a friend of mine here, sitting here, and he would certainly agree. He was there at that particular conversation, and he would certainly echo what I have just said. He said so. Because our country is a country, and why do we say that? That is the day we commemorate. The day when we Indians, who could give something back to the society that has given so much to us, we would commemorate that day as a day of awakening of the real India. Because right now, we have got 2 or 3 Indians, as matters stand. Finally, there was a good lot of talk about the commemoration of 150 years of Rabindranath and 150 years of Vivekananda. I'm not going to go into Rabindranath, I'm not going to go into Satyajit Ray, I'm not going to go into what Kunal quoted on from Hero Deshe. But let me tell you one very simple thing. If you read the notes, the personal notes of Vivekananda, who had a lot of ailments, plenty of ailments. He died eventually of a cerebral hemorrhage, even when he was meditating. This man could venture into all those areas of darkness and more. I've seen evidence of that in one area nobody wants to go to, in a place called Arunachal Pradesh. And I've seen how he alone could come up with a whole lot of Ramakrishna missions, which provided shelter, education. It provided a lot more to all the poverty-stricken people, who could not dare come out in the open. But remember, somewhere trouble is fomenting. There are people who realize there is a certain part of India which figures in the world figures. The world is very impressed India is developing at a fast rate. The growth figures are very impressive, have been very impressive, unless you talk of the global recession in the recent past, have been very impressive. Everything, but everything is urban oriented. We don't talk of the rural part. There was talk of Holocaust. There was talk of a lot of other things that we commemorate because we don't want to repeat it. But what if something is already happening with our full knowledge, with our full information? Do we sit idle, or do we tell those people whom we are going to elect to enact laws in the Indian Parliament to finally do something about those who also are Indians, who are existing, not living, and we would do no favors? Our conscience will have awakened. I thank each and every speaker here, starting with Ashok Vishwanathan, Pradeep Guptu, Dr. Kunal Sarkar, all very seasoned speakers since the student days. I congratulate Professor Surendra Munshi, Ms. Sujata Sen, Ms. Devi Kaur, for having put up a spirited opposition. And ladies and gentlemen,